want to put this stress on people right at this point in time to see if we're going to get regulations. And, it just seems to me that, we're putting this very, very quickly. If we could delay it probably to the fall and work on it over the winter, get lots of input, like you said, I think that'd be great. I believe everything in the water is under federal jurisdiction now anyway. And when we start talking about these water lots back to pre-Confederation, I mean, certainly not a push now to all of a sudden be the first in Canada to do this. I think, the COVID-19, the stress that it's put on people, and then you don't know if you're going to make enough money to pay your bills, and then all of a sudden bylaws come in that you got to get things changed. I think it would be prudent for us just to say, okay, continue on doing some work. Let's look at this after the fall to see if these businesses can even, survive. I just don't feel that it's our pressure right now to do this. I don't know how you feel about that, but I think if we do our due diligence and wait until this season's over, have the people in a room instead of on a computer, people who have access to that, and sit down and get their input, and then we can do, our due diligence on this.
Thank you, Councillor Duron. I guess I would steer the question back to Alex or Robert and say, if this board and council decides to delay and further work in the fall, as Councillor Duron had alluded to, what do short-term regulations, what will they look like for this summer if we were to put enough rules in place to address the liability issue from the city standpoint?
Well, there's a lot of it that's already in this documentation. Maybe to kind of bring this discussion around what you may wish to do, and it's entirely, the board can do whatever they want. You may wish to forward it on to the council for the next council meeting, and you can have the discussion at that time. You can say, A, we would like to delay. 2, you can push out the date for the hearing. It doesn't have to be at the end of this month. It could be, the middle of next month or whatever, if you want more time. Or you could just say, we want to park it, park this issue until, there's more, that there's a robust review and everybody is very comfortable with the position of it. And then, but we still do need to bring that use into conformity. There's a number of life safety issues that are in play down there, and that's the issue. Not about necessarily trying to complicate the lives of the people down there, but we do have some duty in regard to providing a minimum amount of life safety. So we're continuing to work on it. It'll go to council on Monday night. We can advise council heading into that meeting. If you're uncomfortable with it that time, based upon the information that's flowing in, that we will give you the option to either park it, delay the public hearing, or to deal with it in a different manner and to give it some kind of a temporary approval. But before we give the temporary approval, we still need a little bit more work to do.
So Alex, thank you. To give them a temporary approval, I mean, again, we see a lot of information here. What's it look like from the minimum framework versus out of what's being proposed now? I mean, what's the expectations that are going to be put upon the folks that are currently, operating down there and going to be operating this summer versus out of what we were proposing?
Well, it's you do have the ability to grant a temporary use permit, but we still need to be able to determine under what conditions would the temporary use be permitted. Now, that is a better option than bringing in a detailed regulation we may have to amend later, and we certainly don't want to do that. But we would have to apply some kind of a safety regulation on the temporary use to make sure that those life safety concerns, which have been there for some time, have been addressed over the summer months.
I agree. Okay, I'll stop talking.
Just one quick question, Greg, and then I'll be quiet.
No worries.
You say life safety issues, Alex. Hasn't the federal and provincial government have jurisdiction on this anyway?
Well, that's who we're communicating with, and if they're willing to absorb, there's a component of this that we are struggling with, but certainly the federal government has indicated in regard to the food court component that they're indicating that that's nothing that they would approve. So that's a problem, and we're working with the province to see if they're either interested or have the legal jurisdiction to deal with the life safety issues down there. And if they're willing to do that, it would certainly close that loop much more readily, and we'd be more than happy to extend that component of the approval to them.
Okay, thank you.
And Greg,
All right.
can I ask a question?
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's just this is an important issue, and the life safety factor is very important. And whenever you bring in rules and regulations, a lot of times we can grandfather them in, the current tenants in with the current regulations, just the way they are, until we get this thing right. But it's going to take more than one public meeting and one go around at this to get it right. But I don't believe we should park it. I believe we should go forward, because we're surrounded by water, so we should get used to determining what the rules and regulations are and operating a business in and around the water. For our own city tenants, it's for their benefit as well.
So, Greg, it's Alex. On the issue of the, again, what the board wants to do with it or the council wants to do with it, that's your prerogative. But on the issue of life safety, there's no, you cannot get, there's thing that you can get, which is, legal, legally allows something to go on if it's either conforming or it's not conforming to a regulation. So that's the only thing that's generating the urgency, and we will see if we can endeavor to find something that will protect that interest in for a short period of time if we need to, until we get this larger these amendments through, if indeed that's your intention.
So Alex, and Reg, yourself, I don't think anybody's disputing the life safety piece. I don't think there's an appetite to park this as I think more of a deferral and having staff work towards putting in, I don't want to say the minimal rules that are in place, but I guess the things that are most important from a municipal standpoint in for this upcoming season, while getting answers to some of the questions that appear to be unanswered, and offer some more clarity prior to taking it to the public. Because again, I have all the faith in the world in the public, and I think they're, for the most part, pretty smart. And I certainly don't want to be unprepared when we're trying to address, again, this important issue.
Greg, it's Rosemary. Can I just...
Hi, Rosemary.
Hi, bye. So in the communication that we got, it says that the province has jurisdiction over approval of eating establishments, fire marshal inspections, electrical plumbing hookups, and liquor license approval. So is the province currently inspecting these businesses in the food court from those four perspectives? Is that happening?
Robert, do you want to address that?
Maybe I'll take that, Greg.
Okay, Alex, sure. Sorry.
Yeah. So that's, we're not certain because we're still having the dialogue. And again, I've got a meeting with the liquor licensing board at 2:00 to give me the history on it. And there is quite a long history on it. And I don't want to say too much until they tell me how they've reviewed it. But our concern is that when the liquor licensing board gives an approval for a liquor license inside the city, they check with us to make sure the zoning is appropriate, but they're assuming the building it's in has got all of the approvals it needs. So we don't know whether they've just assumed that all of those platforms and floating docks down there have already been inspected by another party. So they're just doing their piece. And that's at the core of it. It's the core of it is what the floating structure, who reviews that, and are the buildings on top meeting some kind of a standard? So, we're again, the dialogue is fairly good recently with the province, and we're trying to get a concerted opinion from both the municipality, the federal government, and the provincial government to bring forward to council to say this is the jurisdiction where this issue falls to. The use is 100% the municipality. The safety component of those docks, we think, likely lies or could lie at another level of government. We can find that. We'll certainly work with them to bring in the appropriate regulation.
It seems like those 4 areas are very key to public safety, and of course the other area would be the docks themselves and how many people can be on them safely and buoyancy and all that kind of thing. But I'm just kind of thinking of what do we really need to have in place in the short term to ensure safety while we're working on these regulations for maybe a slightly longer term perspective.
I think that's what we are working on at this time. That if we can't close the loop as quickly as we would like to on this, then we could possibly offer the board and council the option of a temporary use permit. But we would also, we need to have some pretty good dialogue, which we do with those other provincial bodies, as to how they see the regulation that we're proposing. Do they think that it covers off their concerns? Because they're also involved, right? I mean, the liquor licensing people need to know that whatever issues are there for safety, that they're checking off all of their concerns, because they also have oversight. They provide occupancy for a liquor license. So we all need to come forward with a concerted answer to the question of what is the appropriate safety standard.
I guess all the more reason, Alex, to think that this is going to take some time to get all 3 levels of government on side, singing from the same book sort of thing. So it's probably going to take longer rather than a shorter period of time to get it right.
Could you split the issues into 2 categories? Like, one is safety, and that's not negotiable. No, that's something that could probably move forward fairly quickly, and then leave the other longer term issues for input to a second phase kind of thing. Would that work?
Well, that's why a temporary use permit, it would be different than changing these rules permanently. The temporary use is for a defined period of time. It would impose those safety regulations, but it's very clear to the parties that involved that, again, it's just for that limited period of time, and then it's going to be reviewed again, and these regulations could follow it. So there are mechanisms to hopefully achieve what we all want to achieve. Certainly, planning staff we're not here to complicate the interests of the business community. We do recognize everybody's struggling with this COVID situation. The outside decks may be a preferred option this summer because of social distancing, but we just think it's critical that somehow this summer we have some safety regulation in place on those docks, and that then we can, whether we permanently bring this in immediately or whether we delay it, but we still need those regulations. And that discussion that's happening with the province may flush out what both levels of government are comfortable with recommending for the temporary use.
Okay, thanks, Alex. I do have a suggestion, but I'm going to just keep it open to the board for any other questions or comments prior to what I'm going to recommend. Any other questions or comments? Anybody? So, okay, with that, and if anybody does, just interrupt me. But I think important issues like this, such as I can refer back to the short-term rentals. I certainly do not want to do any kind of public meeting via WebEx for large issues like this. Public gatherings are nowhere in the future to be happening, according to the chief health officer. So, to defer a component of this for further work from staff, as we've been talking about, and having the life safety pieces or the land use identified as our immediate work. I think that's probably a good approach. I'm not sure if the board totally agrees with that, But I think I would defer the actual public meeting itself until we're able to meet in a large gathering. And like I said, that should give us the time to do the rest of the work, get the rest of the information, and put together I'm not saying this document's not strong, but a much stronger document that the public can understand a little bit better. So that would be my suggestion. I don't know if the board feels that's a good idea or not, but I'll leave it up to you folks. Anybody else wanting to chime in?
Greg?
Yes.
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying, and also with what Bobby's saying. I received a phone call here too, and just with the uncertain times in COVID-19, you're coming in with new regulations. I don't think anyone disagrees with, having rules and regulations and the life-saving practices and stuff, but the timing of everything that's going on probably couldn't be worse. And like you say, if you can't get in a room and kind of hash it out, as opposed to trying to do it over computer, and like Bobby said, not everyone has access to computers, and if you were to make changes and it means them spending X amount of dollars to comply with the new regulations on top of, no tourist season, and it's like I say, the timing is certainly questionable. While I can certainly appreciate staff's point of view with trying to make sure, we're trying to follow rules and regulations, I would say there's a lot of unanswered questions, like Rosemary said, and the staff keep working towards that, and we do defer till we get something a little bit more concrete to present.
So thank you, Councillor Cody. So I guess my question to Alex is, and to Robert is, can we move forward with what we had chatted about without a public meeting, or is that something that's still going to require a public meeting?
It wouldn't be a public meeting, but you would likely have to notify everyone within the, it's the same as a variance, right? So you set it up as a variance, we would notify and then it would be just a variance that would go to the next planning board, or whenever, a special planning board meeting, and then council would, either say yay or nay to the temporary use variance.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Suggestions? Am I totally up to lunch?
So, Greg, it's Rosemary again. And just to clarify, what would the temporary variance specify?
Well, the key thing is that it would recognize the use that exists there now, which would, at least for a temporary period, for months as opposed to years, and then we would try to apply the appropriate safety standard, even though it wouldn't maybe be as neat and tidy as later on if the regulations were developed further, but we would at least have something in place. Again, the obligation, everybody wants to accommodate the business community, and that's fine, but we all have a duty to the safety of those people. They expect when they're on that dock that it has been approved and it is safe. So we would have to bring in something and work with the owners, whether CADC or the Gales, who are the leaseors of that, leasees of that property, that they have provided us enough information to make us comfortable that it is safe to have the public on it.
Yeah, fair enough.
Would it require approval from the province for the eating establishment and fire marshal inspection?
All of those things that there are already, that is their domain. We have nothing to do with it. Everybody who's listed there at the province, they provide separate approvals. But what these discussions are trying to indicate to them, and they may or may not know, that the core approval, which usually happens in the city, is the building permit that made it safe. We don't know. They may have been just assuming that the city signed off on those things, and therefore the platform that it's on is not their concern. And then so they're giving their separate and specific approval, but they may or may not know under what conditions they're giving their approval.
Does the federal government not inspect it or give approval now, Alex?
No. Now, if it's a vessel, if it's deemed a vessel, that's how this all started with steamers. Steamers got it registered as a vessel, and if it's a vessel, again, staff would be more than happy to say, let the federal government deal with the safety component of it. We'll deal with the use. We have been in contact with the federal government, and they're indicating the primary use down there, which is the food courty place on the floating dock. They clearly do not recognize anything even remotely as a vessel.
Okay.
All right. Any other questions, comments? All right. If we don't have any questions or comments, is anyone interested in putting forward a resolution that we can all help massage, if need be? Anyone? I feel like a dentist here trying to pull teeth. Anybody want to put a resolution forward? Staff's recommendation again is to go to a public consultation now. We've heard from council, some councillors, as well as board members and staff. Again, on potential other avenues. The question is where does the board want to go? And we're not going to know that until someone puts a motion on the floor and it's seconded, and then we can put it to a vote. Anyone?
I agree there has to be safety, and I don't mind putting something on that piece of it until this other stuff can get ironed, until those conversations happen. I think we're all not even following this ourselves, trying to understand who knows these three levels of government, who's responsible for what. Like, that needs to be cleared up, and then I don't know how to word that though. How do you?
So I guess I'll try throwing something out there and see what I figure. So we're looking to defer the public meeting, which is what today's thing was to do, the public consultation. So right away, we're looking to defer that until we either gather more information or get answers to questions that we don't have. But in the meantime, have staff continue working on the I'll say temporary permit or allowing for temporary use in that area, and any safety component that needs to be established. Something along that lines. I'll leave it to Ellen and Alex and crew to put something together, but something that sounds like that.
I would think all business people would want their establishment safe. I don't think anyone wants to have a dock on the water where they're serving people food, an unsafe or an unfit thing. So I'm sure that we can do something around that.
But again, we're not. No one's arguing that component of it again. But that's by the sounds of it, the safety component of those floating docks are the responsibility of the federal government, I believe, or a different jurisdiction. So it's not even ours. But we have to recognize these as uses within that what's going to be a zone. So that's kind of the key for us. A lot of the other stuff takes part with other jurisdictions, levels of government. So again, we're not saying that the safety component piece isn't paramount. We're just saying that we need to recognize it as a temporary land use right now, while staff continues to work on the regulations and framework that we can ultimately take to a public meeting.
Greg?
Yes.
Can I word something like this? That I move that the planning department take this presentation to the next council meeting, and that a council address the outstanding safety issue.
I think that's a foregone conclusion. No matter how this board votes today, Reg, it does go to council anyways. So they'll see all the discussion, but they do need a recommendation from this board because again, it's the recommendation on the report from planning staff is to send this to a public consultation to review the proposed framework. As discussion happened today, from my understanding, there seems to be reluctance to a public meeting right now until further information is gathered. But there are components of this that staff can work on, be it like I said, a variance for a temporary use that can be the work can be done without having to go through and a public meeting and adopting a large document like this. Does that make any sense?
Alex, I sense you had some concerns about safety. Does this do it for you, the safety component?
Well, I'm just trying to think. One of the options could be that you want this to be revisited at the June planning board meeting. So then that would come back again. We would have a little bit more time, and maybe at that time we would. I guess at some point, if we're going to do it as a temporary use permit, we have to determine what we notify the public that what we're contemplating. So that if it's a temporary use permit, that the adjacent property owners need to be notified. So that's a little bit of the tricky part to get them under some kind of an approval fairly quickly. So maybe what you wish to do is that. The work on this continue, that the public meeting be temporarily put on hold, and staff endeavor to look at, coming back to the June meeting or to a future planning board meeting with this application being processed as a temporary use.
It's a great resolution if someone wants to say, geez, we'll move that.
And I'd second it.
I can't move it though. So, okay. Chris, are you moving?
I'll move that.
I'll second.
Okay, so the resolution has been moved and seconded. Alex, so you're going to be able to put that before we do the vote. You're going to be able to put what you just said in a form of a resolution.
Yeah, I think so. So the issue will be is that if you this doesn't have to go to council on Monday night because you're not recommending right now that it goes to public hearing.
Okay.
You're basically recommending that it be considered as a temporary use and that be forwarded back to the planning board at the most sort of convenient component after the public notification requirement or something.
Okay, perfect. Okay. All right, so it's just for the board. So moved and seconded that we're going to get back in June. Is there any further questions, comments? And nothing. So I'll just say all in favor.
Aye.
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 Okay. Is there anyone opposed?
Yeah, I am, Greg.
Okay, who's sorry?
John.
Okay, so you're opposed to deferring it?
Well, I'd like to see it defer to the fall. That's what I'd like to, after the season's over.
Yeah, again, keep in mind, Councillor Drawn, that we're deferring this again at the board level, just for next month to gather more information. And at some point, we're going to have to do a public consultation. But again, we can defer it at that time. So this is just at the board level, so it's not going to have to go to council.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So if next month that it happens where staff have more information, they bring something forward and they're recommending again to go to a public consultation, and then again that's something we'll have to vote on. But this again just to defer for the planning board to have it come back next month. I don't know if that changes your vote or not.
Yeah, it probably would. Yeah.
Okay, so you're okay with that?
Sure.
Okay, so it's so it appears to be unanimous. And with that, thank you, everybody. I know it was a confusing meeting. And thank you for your comments and input. And I need a motion to adjourn, please. Okay, perfect. Thanks, everyone. Have a great one.
Sure.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks.
Thanks.